Have you ever wondered why INFJs seem to disappear from certain places, why they slip away without warning, or why they look uncomfortable in environments where everyone else seems fine? It's not arrogance, and it's not fear. It's something much deeper. For an INFJ, physical locations are not merely spaces. They are emotional ecosystems. The energy, the noise, the people, and even the underlying intent of a place can either feed their spirit or completely drain it. In this video, we'll look inside the INFJ's mind and explore the hidden emotional and spiritual radar that guides where they go and what they avoid. You'll see why certain spaces drain them, while others make them come alive. One of the first places an INFJ avoids is anywhere that feels chaotic, noisy, or overstimulating. Their internal world is already full of rich thoughts, intuitions, and reflections, so when the external environment adds unnecessary clutter, loud music, flashing lights, or crowds, they quickly become overwhelmed. Busy clubs, parties, or bustling marketplaces are often unbearable for them. It's not that they dislike people. In fact, INFJs love human connection deeply, but they prefer depth over volume, meaning they would rather share quiet laughter with one close friend in a serene cafe than shout over music in a crowded bar. Noise feels like static to them. It disrupts their ability to think clearly, to feel in tune with others, and to maintain inner harmony. They also steer clear of places where superficiality reigns. Environments where people gather only to show off, gossip, or impress each other with shallow displays of wealth or popularity leave the INFJ feeling like a ghost among strangers. They can sense insincerity like a scent in the air, and it makes them uneasy. Pretentious social scenes, networking events built purely on self-promotion, or workplaces that thrive on competition rather than collaboration are environments they instinctively avoid. INFJs crave authenticity. They want to feel that every interaction, no matter how brief, carries genuine emotional weight. When they find themselves in places where masks are the norm and truth is rare, they feel alienated and spiritually suffocated. Toxic environments of any kind repel the INFJ. This could be a home where constant arguing and negativity dominate, or a workplace steeped in manipulation and politics. Their sensitivity to emotional energy means they can't just shrug off toxicity like some might. It seeps into their mind and heart, leaving them drained for days. They will quietly begin to withdraw, not in anger, but as a form of self-protection. INFJs absorb emotional atmospheres like sponges, so if a place is heavy with resentment, competition, or unspoken tension, they will feel it as if it were their own burden. This is why they often choose solitude or nature as their refuge, to cleanse themselves from the psychic clutter they unconsciously collect. They also avoid places where they feel they can't be themselves. INFJs have a deep sense of individuality and authenticity, and environments that pressure them to conform, perform, or hide their true nature make them recoil. Whether it's a workplace where they're expected to fit into rigid hierarchies, a religious setting that discourages questioning, or a social circle that mocks sensitivity, INFJs will quietly retreat. They thrive in spaces where they can be reflective, imaginative, and sincere. When they sense judgment or disconnection, they pull back, not because they don't care, but because they value integrity over approval. Another place they avoid is any setting where people are constantly demanding their energy without reciprocation. INFJs are natural healers and listeners. People are drawn to them for advice, comfort, and understanding. But when a space, be it a home, a friend group, or even an online community, becomes a one-sided emotional exchange, it begins to feel like a trap. INFJs might seem endlessly patient, but they are not immune to emotional exhaustion. They long for mutual nourishment, where empathy flows both ways. So when a place becomes associated with emotional imbalance, they instinctively distance themselves. It's not rejection, it's survival. INFJs are deeply spiritual and introspective, so they avoid environments that constantly distract them from inner reflection. They need time to process their thoughts, recharge their empathy, and connect to something greater than themselves. Crowded malls, noisy offices, or constant digital chatter can cut them off from this inner rhythm. In contrast, They are drawn to places that allow quiet contemplation. Libraries, beaches, forests, art galleries, or simply their dimly lit room filled with books and music. These are sanctuaries where they can reconnect with their deeper self. To the INFJ, silence isn't empty. It's sacred space where meaning breathes. They also tend to avoid overly materialistic environments where everything revolves around money, possessions, or appearances. Consumer-driven settings can feel spiritually hollow to them. They see beyond surface value. They are far more interested in purpose, emotion, and truth than in luxury or status. Walking through an extravagant mall or attending a show of excess might even trigger existential discomfort in them. They might ask silently, why are we all chasing these things that mean nothing to the soul? It's not judgment. It's their natural tendency to see the deeper story behind human behavior. And when that story feels empty, they lose interest quickly. Conflict-heavy environments are another source of distress for the INFJ. They dislike confrontation and are highly attuned to emotional tension. A room where people are arguing feels to them like standing in a thunderstorm without shelter. Even if they aren't directly involved, they feel the emotional currents crashing through them. Family gatherings with unresolved grudges, workplaces with clashing egos, or social groups full of drama are spaces they try to escape from quietly. Peace isn't a luxury for INFJs, it's a necessity. Without it, their thoughts grow tangled, their emotions become heavy, and their intuitive insight fades. Another place INFJs avoid is any environment where they once felt safe but were betrayed. Because they form emotional bonds slowly and deeply, any space associated with broken trust becomes haunted ground. It might be an old friend's house where a secret was revealed, a workplace where they were unappreciated, or even a relationship spot that holds too many bittersweet memories. INFJs rarely revisit such places, not out of bitterness, but because revisiting would reopen wounds they've spent so much effort to heal. Their memories run deep, and spaces connected to emotional pain linger vividly in their psyche. And then there are the intangible places, the psychological ones, that they avoid too. They stay away from conversations that belittle others, from ideologies that divide rather than unite, and from groups that discourage compassion. Their moral compass is strong, and they crave environments aligned with their values. When the world around them begins to feel cold, harsh, or morally gray, they retreat into their own inner sanctum, a world of imagination, music, philosophy, and meaning. In their solitude, they don't feel lonely, they feel restored. INFJs also avoid places that constantly demand them to be on. They dislike environments where they have to wear a social mask for too long, where every smile must be rehearsed, every conversation feels like a performance, and every action must be politically correct. Corporate offices with artificial politeness, social events filled with empty chatter, or even family gatherings where they must play a role that doesn't reflect who they truly are can quietly exhaust them. Because INFJs are deeply introspective and value authenticity, they find such performative spaces emotionally taxing. They crave spaces that allow them to simply exist without needing to justify their feelings or hide their depth. They avoid places where people are closed-minded or resistant to growth. Nothing frustrates an INFJ more than being in an environment that discourages questioning, self-awareness, or learning. For them, life is an evolving journey toward truth, and they are drawn to people and places that mirror that evolution. Stagnant settings, whether they are workplaces stuck in outdated methods, religious communities rigid in dogma, or social groups that shun new ideas, feel suffocating. INFJs thrive on mental expansion and soulful exploration. When they sense that curiosity is unwelcome or that ignorance is being defended, they emotionally withdraw. They prefer being around people who ask why and what if rather than those who insist that the world should remain as it is. They avoid places that feel spiritually hollow. They are attuned not just to emotional energy, but to spiritual vibration. A place can look beautiful, well-decorated, and impressive on the outside, yet feel dead to them inside. They can walk into a lavish building, a modern megachurch, or a grand home, and still sense emptiness if there's no warmth, sincerity, or sacredness in the atmosphere. Conversely, They might find deep peace in a small, humble chapel, a quiet forest path, or a modest room filled with laughter and love. For INFJs, it's never about physical beauty. It's about the unseen presence that fills a space. When they feel that absence, they slip away quietly, seeking somewhere that resonates with their inner calm. They stay clear of environments that thrive on competition or ego battles. INFJs are cooperative by nature and believe in mutual upliftment rather than rivalry. They see life as a shared journey, not a race. This makes them uncomfortable in environments where everyone is trying to outshine one another, such as high-pressure corporate workplaces, elitist academic circles, or creative communities where envy and comparison dominate. To the INFJ, such spaces corrode authenticity and turn relationships into transactions. They would rather work in solitude than exist in an environment that breeds insecurity or undermines compassion. Places that lack privacy or personal space are also avoided by INFJs. They need solitude the way others need air. It's in solitude that they recharge, reflect, and reconnect with their core identity. Constantly being around people or being watched makes them feel trapped. Open-plan offices, overcrowded hostels, or even overly communal living arrangements can cause them deep discomfort. They are not antisocial, but they require regular withdrawal to stay emotionally balanced. Their alone time isn't loneliness, it's restoration. Without that sacred privacy, their thoughts become scattered and their energy depletes rapidly. They also stay clear of places tied to unresolved memories or unhealed wounds. INFJs have near photographic emotional memory. They can vividly recall how a place made them feel, even years later. If they experience betrayal, heartbreak, or humiliation somewhere, returning there feels like stepping back into the moment. Their intuition replays the emotions as if no time has passed, so they often choose not to revisit such locations. It's not avoidance out of weakness, but a form of emotional hygiene. They understand the power of environment in shaping inner peace. INFJs also stay away from places that over-commercialize meaning or exploit emotions for profit. They are wary of spaces, physical or digital, that use sentiment, spirituality, or self-help as a facade for manipulation. They might enter an event or an online group that claims to promote positivity or enlightenment, but if they sense exploitation or hidden motives, they quietly leave. Their inner moral radar is strong, and they cannot stand spaces that prey on the vulnerable or distort truth for personal gain. They also avoid places where cruelty or insensitivity is normalized. Whether it's a workplace where employees are treated like disposable tools, a school culture where bullying is ignored, or a household where empathy is mocked, INFJs feel an immediate inner resistance. Their compassion makes them unable to tolerate coldness disguised as discipline or just the way things are. When they find themselves in such spaces, their heart aches, not only for themselves but for everyone suffering silently. And once they leave, they rarely return. They avoid places that feel overly artificial, where everything seems constructed to impress rather than to connect. Social media-driven cafes, influencer events, or picture-perfect homes that lack genuine warmth can leave them feeling alienated. INFJs crave authenticity in every texture of their lives, and artificial environments trigger a subtle sadness in them. They would rather be in an imperfect, cluttered, but emotionally honest space than in a flawless one that feels soulless. They also avoid environments that force constant urgency. INFJs dislike places where everyone is in a rush, where time feels like an enemy, and where there's no room to breathe or reflect. Airports, busy city streets, and fast-paced offices can make them feel detached from themselves. They prefer environments that move with intention rather than haste, places where life feels meaningful rather than mechanical. They avoid any place that silences emotion. They believe deeply in the importance of feeling, of allowing emotions to speak, heal, and guide. Places where vulnerability is seen as weakness, where emotions are suppressed in the name of professionalism or pride, make them deeply uncomfortable. They feel like they are living behind glass in such spaces, unable to bring their whole selves to the table. For them, emotional honesty is sacred, and any environment that rejects it becomes unbearable. They are usually uncomfortable in environments that constantly glorify superficial success or material achievement at the expense of meaning. They find it difficult to exist in environments where people measure worth solely by wealth, possessions, or external validation. Places like corporate award dinners, high-end clubs, or exclusive gatherings where everyone seems to be competing for recognition feel hollow to them. The INFJ's mind constantly searches for depth and authenticity, for purpose behind appearance. When the atmosphere revolves around self-promotion rather than substance, it feels spiritually dry. To them, there's a quiet tragedy in environments where everyone looks accomplished but no one feels alive. They avoid places that lack emotional safety. An INFJ needs to feel that they can express themselves without being mocked, misunderstood, or dismissed. Environments where vulnerability is punished, like workplaces where honesty is seen as weakness, or families that avoid emotional conversations, can deeply wound them. They long for emotionally intelligent spaces where people listen, reflect, and support. When they don't find that, they often detach quietly rather than confront it. Emotional safety is a non-negotiable condition for an INFJ's trust to flourish, and without it, every space feels alien. INFJs often avoid places that are too unpredictable or unstable. Their intuitive nature likes to anticipate emotional rhythms, and they feel uneasy in places where energy swings wildly, where calm can turn into chaos without warning. Bars that suddenly erupt into fights, volatile households, or workplaces with erratic leadership drain them because they can't find emotional footing. Their sensitivity makes them crave predictability, not because they fear change, but because they value environments where emotional currents flow steadily rather than crash unpredictably. They also avoid places that suppress individuality. INFJs are naturally nonconformist thinkers, quietly defying rigid molds. Spaces that demand sameness, such as institutions that discourage creativity or social settings where everyone must agree, make them restless. They value authenticity and inner truth more than acceptance, so they will remove themselves from any environment that forces them to dilute their uniqueness. They would rather stand alone in quiet integrity than blend into a crowd that has lost its sense of self. Environments that prioritize constant stimulation, places like theme parks, nightclubs, or loud festivals, can also make INFJs withdraw. They prefer emotional richness over sensory overload. To others, these places may feel fun and exciting, but to the INFJ, they feel draining, as if their inner world is being drowned out by external chaos. They need stillness and mental space to process their feelings, ideas, and intuition. In high-energy spaces, they begin to feel scattered, detached, and even anxious, craving solitude to recenter. They avoid places where people compete for attention. INFJs don't like having to fight to be heard. They are natural listeners and thinkers who value meaningful exchange, so environments filled with loud voices and constant interruptions leave them feeling unseen. Whether it's a classroom dominated by egos or a social circle where everyone is talking but no one is listening, such places exhaust them. They prefer intimate, quiet settings where words are deliberate and minds meet without noise. They also avoid places that force constant extroversion. While they can appear outgoing and charming when needed, prolonged social exposure drains them. Networking events, large classrooms, or group trips can quickly wear them down. They may enjoy them for a while, but afterward, they need long stretches of solitude to recover. To an INFJ, being alone is not about escape. It's about maintenance of emotional equilibrium. Too much social stimulation without reflection feels like spiritual dehydration. They avoid environments where empathy is manipulated or taken advantage of. INFJs often attract people who crave emotional support, but give little in return. When an environment consistently demands their compassion without replenishment, it becomes emotionally parasitic. Whether it's a toxic friendship circle or an organization that exploits their idealism for its own agenda, they will eventually detach. Their boundaries may be quiet but firm. They know that empathy without balance leads to burnout.